Hello, we're
Hi
back.
there. Good
Welcome to Liminal.
afternoon or evening for some people, early morning for some. I hope
You
you're
are.
having a good day as you come through and listen to Ces and I on the Liminal Writing Podcast.
Yes. So we've chosen this time to read from an old piece we had written and that we never went back to. It's just filed here in our archives, but we plucked it out and we're going to read it again for the first time after all these years
Yeah.
and talk about it. Here we go.
Cool.
This is the product of a 10-minute free writing exercise. And the
Mm.
trigger line was actually a question, right?
Yeah. What are the
Conversations.
conversations that we are excluded from?
Who goes first?
I'll go first
Go,
this time. All right,
Gary.
cool.
Go ahead.
I walk around the rooms following the whispered tones and faded words. Around the corners, my face brushing against the lace curtains, my feet first tentatively, then more assuredly move past the table of covered food from an unfinished meal. They look at me as I come into the secret they've created with their bodies. What have I come into? What past is being anchored in this moment? There is something here, shaded, murky, marshy. I can feel it, but I don't know what it is. This moment needs to be patched to another. Then I may know what it means.
Hey, I'm going to talk
Feels
about
like a
that.
theater.
Okay. Conversations that we are excluded from. Well, I really don't know about this. I have come to a point where I feel I can choose what conversations I want to be a part of. And I can also start conversations that I want people to join me in. Those
Mm,
conversations where I may have been excluded from. I am thankful for that exclusion. At least I think I am, because I seek silence more than conversations nowadays. It is just the space I have arrived in at this stage in my life. So I'd like to
mm,
think of it this way. If I have been excluded from a conversation, I am probably best excluded from it. Either they don't need me or I don't need them. No
mm,
one's time is wasted, certainly not mine. Asking myself this question has made me realize how much power I have taken into my own hands by speaking out truth for even the most painful and scary parts of my life
mm,
journey. I have opened up and led conversations that are difficult not only for me to have with myself and others, but also difficult for others to have to hear. I have spoken
mm,
of abuse, of
mm,
illness, of
mm,
numbness, of pain, and of fear. I have also spoken of joy and growth and learning and faith.
mm,
And I have also helped others join in conversations about who they are and what their own life journeys have been and what they
mm,
think they can make of their future lives. Mine has been a battle against exclusion and an enabling of conversations. I am grateful to be an instrument for this power and grace. All right, let's talk about this.
So the
It brought,
conversations that you were thinking of when you wrote about this were the ones that were mostly from your
I think
professional
so.
life.
I think so, especially where it led me in the end was
Mm,
because, both of us, we do a lot of facilitation work.
yes.
We enable conversations
Mm,
in so many ways. We have so many tools that bring out expressions, stories,
yeah.
reflections, experiences from others. And that's what I've done for decades
Mm,
across many contexts,
organizations.
communities to
Yes.
national level, to women, to persons with disabilities,
Mm,
leaders. So I think that's what I wrote off in the end. And because also in the nature of my work, especially when I was doing a lot of work with people who were affected by HIV, not just
Yes.
living with HIV, but also marginalized populations who have less access to services.
Yes.
As you try to kind of help them empower themselves or become more aware of their options and what solutions they could come to, and
Yeah.
that's maybe where the notion of a battle against exclusion, because in a way that's how I related to them, coming from
Yeah.
a background where abuse that I personally experienced was
Mm.
something I could not even talk about to my own self, and then
Mm.
much more so to others. And that's what I meant when I said uncomfortable. I've been able to speak about it, and even in ways where, in situations where it became uncomfortable for others to hear about it,
Mm.
right? Um, so yeah, I think that's where it's coming from.
There's something that is um, both humbling and powerful about being able to facilitate conversations
Go ahead.
wherein you've had your own brush with the experience or have been heavily in it as a participant or an unwilling participant. Because there's so much that you bring in of understanding, empathy, the choice of words,
Mm,
and the tone, because you know how it feels like to receive that
mm,
experience or that abuse or that demeaning
mm,
look or a snide remark. So I always think that what makes us unique as facilitators is, especially if you're working with groups that have been affected or you have a very close parallel experience with them, it really helps unpack a lot of things because you're both, I don't know if you're both gentle and forceful with the group so that
mm,
you know, because you heard them say this is what we want to get out of it. So what are the ways, what
mm,
are the tools
mm,
in which they can be both truthful, even if it's a little bit pained, but because you're thinking about what's the larger
mm,
impact or end
mhm,
that we're hoping, that we're building, what's the future that we're building based from
mm.
what we've come through.
Yeah.
So,
Mm. But don't get me wrong, it's not like I don't go through a whole, when there were phases, and there's still moments now when you
mm,
feel sad or angry even that you are not part of a certain conversation. But I think
mm,
I take power from the fact too that I can create my own conversations. Like what you and
mm,
I are doing with liminal writing, right? We are creating
mm,
our own conversations, or now our own insights, and structuring our narratives around certain issues we're passionate about. And I think
yeah,
that's where we take power. And that
mm,
is what art has done to us, theater has done to both of us, really,
yeah,
isn't it? Because
yes.
when we were young, we had the power of theater. We were in street theater. We could respond to issues that are coming on that very same day, at that very same morning, and create and improvise and be
Yeah.
out there. We didn't even have a, to wait for a stage or a theater. We
Oh,
went to
yeah,
whatever space was available in the lobby of a university building
yeah. Or a
or
street
on the
corner.
steps. We
Uh,
created those spaces. I think that's where the thing we both share, that actually, yes,
mm,
maybe we're not included in certain spaces or where conversations were happening, but we
mm,
created our own. We knew the power of
yeah,
creating those spaces, and it has, even up to now, I think, become almost instinctive to us that
yeah.
we create our own space, we create our own conversations, and the even better yet, in our professions, both you and me, we enable it for others.
Yeah, I agree. I mentioned to you a while back, I think a couple of days ago, when I went to Sunday service at the
Yeah,
Metropolitan Community Church of
yeah,
Toronto. And that was actually the theme of the pastor, June Joplin.
Yeah.
And so she said, what makes us human is we
Mhm.
go create stuff. And because there is power in acknowledging that we have the
The power.
mind, the spirit, and the heart to create stuff for the betterment of communities so voices can be heard, so that we assert ourselves in the world that this is who we are, this is our point of view, and it has to be included in that big mosaic of what beauty and tension is,
Mhm.
acknowledging that there is tension in the world, right?
Mhm.
So
Mm. But
it's
it's
it's a
point
good
back.
way when you brought it in. I haven't thought about it that way in
Yeah.
terms of our background in theater and how that
Yes.
plays in resourcefulness, being nimble to respond to things on the spot, especially I think as your facilitator, because you do have a
Yes.
plan that you have, but you don't necessarily know what the participants will bring in or what external factors will
Yep.
shape what your day is going to
Yep.
be like, right? So
And
it's
that is exactly the kind of
resilience.
theater practice we had, right? It was street theater and people's theater. We were interacting to not only
Yeah.
situations but to our audiences, not just the content, but in the even how you stage it or where you place yourself,
Yeah.
how you block the blocking in that space. How do you even place yourself in that street corner or platform or atop whatever?
That's the power of creative people or artists about being audacious in saying that we have a story to tell, we have an issue that we'd like to bring in front
Yeah.
of everybody. And this is the way that we present it. So it's our point of view on it, but it invites conversation and say, what do you think of it? I mean, especially with the theater of the oppressed
Yeah.
styles of
Mm, mm, mm.
putting up a show, right? And
Yeah.
because it's about the community
That,
stepping into the story
yeah.
and reshaping the story.
That's Augusto Boal and Theater of the Oppressed for those who want to read. But I wanted to very quickly before we wrap up, just go back. What was the feeling that you had reading back what you wrote, and what are your reflections now of what that was for you?
So this is a few years now after we wrote it. I cannot remember now the impetus for that. So
Ah,
that's why I said it feels like a theater scene. I know that I was writing, if I
yes.
remember correctly, from an actual scene that I saw, but I cannot pinpoint it now
Ah,
on what that scene was. But it encompasses a feeling of coming into
into a
something
situation.
I
Yeah.
think that you weren't supposed to hear, and yet I think that there was something very emotional and personal about what was being spoken of that I felt, hey, I need to understand this because I think it is important and there's a weight to it, but I cannot now pinpoint exactly what that is.
Ah, okay. Interesting. Because you use a lot of imagery and there was an emotion, but I wasn't quite certain if was it a real situation or
Yeah.
a metaphor. But anyway.
I'm thinking it must have been something like in the province because of the way I talk about like a curtain that brushes through the skin and the table with the food. So I'm
So
at
you felt like you stepped into a situation. They were talking and you kind of intruded into the space. Is that what
yeah, yeah,
there
unintentionally,
are
but it felt like the conversation might have involved a part of me
right,
because that's why I remember
right,
it.
right.
And so that's why there are pieces that are kind of very visceral because I can, feel about
If you were
the
in that
things moving on
if
my
you
skin.
it was the lead now stepping into that situation, what would you have said or done?
Hard to say. Well, now because as an adult you have more power and you have the
Yeah.
language, I think. So either maybe I would have said, is this something that I should sit down with you
Okay.
for? Or,
I would probably say, "Oh, were you
if
talking
it's
about
not,
me?"
if it's not, and it includes me, and
Mm,
you don't want me here, then stop talking about it. Right?
nice boundaries. Okay. All right. So
Ay,
there
ay.
we go. That's what where that's where it led us, and the trigger line was conversations that we are excluded from.
Excluded from.
So if you want to have a go, and it might take you to uncomfortable places in your own mind or experience, but
Mm,
just that is sometimes where the best things come. Go for the jugular, as
mm,
Natalie Goldberg would say in her Wild Mind writing. When it's scary and or it hurts, go for
mm.
that. That's where creative energy sometimes really bubbles up. On that
Yeah.
note, thank you very much. And that was another session of Liminal Writing.
Thank you, folks. See you in the next one.